Steeler Nation, what's up, man? What's up, man? About to lock in and get to watching Mike Tomlin's last press conference of the year, of the season. Just give me a reason. Give me a reason. You know, we're gonna get there though. Definitely gonna get there, man. Sometimes it take a couple minutes, sometimes it take 2, sometimes it takes 30. They just getting started. But if you're watching this right now, make sure you tap into VentureSeasonNetwork.com ASAP. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Good morning, actually good afternoon everyone. Bob Pompiani here at the Steeler headquarters on the south side as we get you set for the final Mike Tomlin press conference of this season. The Steelers, of course, got into the playoffs at 9-7-1, had to go through a nervous Sunday a couple of weeks ago where they had to wait for the final outcome of that game out west. They got in and they promptly have left the playoffs after losing big time to the Kansas City Chiefs last week 42-21. So their season is now over. That means there are a lot of decisions that need to be made. You can go through the list of fifth-year option for Devin Bush, what they do with Minka Fitzpatrick. You got some unrestricted free agents like Joe Hayden, Akello Witherspoon, as well as Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington. A lot of questions that obviously need to be answered in the next several months. Mike Tomlin is ready now to address the media for his final press conference of this season.
Good afternoon. You know, this is always a bittersweet press conference for me. The finality of it all, you get in fight mode week in and week out. You do it for 6-7 months, and so you find rhythm in that. Those of us that are competitors, you know, we love that. But it all comes to a screeching halt in the single elimination tournament. And so that's why we're here. I'm so appreciative of the efforts of all people involved, players, coaches, support staff. Can't say enough about the support that we have here as players and coaches, man. We get significant contributions from so many people, particularly in this COVID environment and the way that has been challenging, and people's willingness to give of themselves and to do the things that are necessary to put us in the best position to function and be successful. I'm just appreciative of all of those things. I say I'm appreciative of those things, but at the same time, I acknowledge that, you know, we're having this press conference, and so we didn't live out our desires for this season. And I've been at it a while now, and I understand that. I understand that that's a reality for 31 of us. At one time or another, and there can only be one. I don't seek comfort in saying that. You guys know it's not only our hope and dream, but our goal, our agenda to be that one. For a myriad of reasons, we are not this year. And so as we push into the off season before we start building for 2022, it starts first and foremost with analyzing why we're not that group this year. And so that's what we're doing. We're at the infancy of that exploration. I'm excited about doing it. I'm not excited about, you know, the fact that it's happening now, but just the analysis, the beginnings of the analysis that leads to building is something that I personally am excited about. The growth and development of these guys individually and collectively is a passion. And so I'm starting with that process. That process always starts with exit interviews and a myriad of those between a lot of people, you know, players with positional coaches, players with support staff, strength coaches, training staff, equipment, etc. Wrapping a bow around what it is that we're done and planning for the future. I personally I've started the process of meeting with players. I've been doing that all morning and will continue. I meet with virtually everyone. But I prioritize the rookies. I prioritize the first-year Steelers, the guys whose contracts are up. I usually hold leadership off until the end because our conversations, extend beyond the blocks of time that I have allotted and things of that nature. So that's where we are, starting that process. I've started that briefly, some with coaches and as well and support staff. That'll be ongoing in the upcoming days and weeks. I'll say this about this process, and I expressed it to the team yesterday. I understand change is a part of our business, and I don't run away from it. I'm not overly resistant to it. I don't run to it as well. I don't change for the sake of changing. I'm open to change where appropriate, and so I acknowledge that that's a component of this business, and among all parties involved. And so we proceed with that understanding. I'm appreciative of the efforts, but things usually don't stay the same in totality. And so I'm sure we'll be gaining some clarity about that component of it and the division of labor within as we proceed. But it's really early in that process for me. I'm just acknowledging that that's a component of what we're doing here. Assessing the physical status of a lot of people, that's been positive. It doesn't appear that there's any significant surgeries for anyone as we sit here today. Any of the surgical procedures that needed to be done have already been done. And so that's positive. I'm sure there's wear and tear associated with playing and things of that nature, but nothing really big on the radar from a health standpoint. And so individually and collectively, it's always good when you can go into an off season, relatively healthy. I think it just provides a good springboard for 2022. Talking to the guys about off-season plans and planning, what does the construction of their base look like for 2022? Some of the younger guys, helping them establish habits, or training locations and things of that nature. Those are some of the many things that are going on during this process.
Come on, man. What y'all doing over there, Steeler Nation? We're not Steeler Nation. What are y'all doing?
Healthy. I think it just provides a good springboard for 2022. Talking to the guys about off-season plans and planning, what does the construction of their base look like for 2022? Some of the younger guys, helping them establish habits, or training locations and things of that nature. Those are some of the many things that are going on during this process. And so just wanted to kind of paint a picture of that and get the discussion started that way. And now I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, your offense averaged 6 points per game fewer this year than it did last year. How would you assess
that and what he's capable of doing? I acknowledge that, we took a step back. There's some obvious tangible reasons why that occurred. So I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm not going to seek comfort in that. We got to be better. We intend to be. And that's going to require a lot of planning and work, players and coaches.
Mike, just for clarity's sake, is the organization operating under the assumption that Ben will not be, excuse me, playing next year? And do you think Mason and/or Dwayne Haskins is ready to be an everyday starting quarterback in this league?
We are proceeding with that assumption. Both guys, Mason and Dwayne, have had their moments, but they'll have to prove that, and not only in the team development process, but through playing itself. They're guys that start that I wouldn't characterize as everyday starters, as you described. And so they'll be given an opportunity to establish themselves, and they're going to be competition. There always is, and so they'll write that story. But I think that both guys have positioned themselves to fight that fight with what they've done from a work standpoint and a professionalism standpoint in 2021.
Mike, in terms of the offense again and taking a step back, all statistics show it was a step back. Is that a tricky evaluation when you do have up to 7 new starters, 3 new coaches on that offensive side of the ball this year?
You know, like I mentioned, you could seek comfort in those facts and things of that nature, but I won't, and I don't. We got to be better than we were, and that's one of the critical reasons why we're sitting here having this end of the year discussion as opposed to me working and planning and getting ready to play this week. And so we got to be better.
Mike, when you look at the quarterback room and knowing that you have Mason under contract, we'll have a chance to evaluate Dwayne. How do you weigh how you proceed adding to that group versus adding a rookie or a veteran guy?
Good question. You know, right now, you know, all options are on the table, but those decisions are interrelated based on our global needs and the totality of those global needs. And, you know, I enjoy working with Kevin this time of year because we just, you know, we speak plain English. You know, we have to improve our football team. There's 2 major ways that you do it. You do it through free agency and you do it through the draft. And so we have to look at what's available to us in the draft positionally. We have to look at what's available to us potentially in free agency positionally. And then we kind of bring those 2 discussions together, and it kind of gives us a path in which to go about addressing our needs. And so having worked with him for as long as I have, I'm sure that we'll remain in that mode. We're very comfortable in terms of identifying the things that we need to do and how we need to go about having those discussions and framing those discussions. And I'm excited about doing it.
Mike, it sounded a minute ago like you're anticipating having Matt Canada back. Are you anticipating any staff changes?
You know, I don't know that I'm anticipating any, but I don't know that I'm going to be surprised by any. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about change is a component of what we do, what we're doing here. This exit process, this information gathering process, this conversations that we're all having is geared toward assessing what it is that we've done and plotting the most clear course in terms of how to proceed. And so I'm doing that. Individuals are doing that. And so when that's transpiring, you acknowledge that potentially change is a component of it in our business at this level.
Along those lines, Mike, along with Keith Butler on defense, do you anticipate him coming back? And how do you think the defense fared this year?
You know, Butts has had conversations about this being potentially his last year. He and I had an opportunity to sit down. I'm doing player interviews. He's doing player interviews. And so we haven't had a detailed conversation in that regard. But defensively, you know, we didn't play as well as we'd like either. We got to get better in that area. And you can talk about player availability or lack thereof. If you seek comfort, I don't, we don't. All we have is what's on tape and our record. And so we need to be better. I'm not comfortable with what we did against the run. I don't think any of us are comfortable or happy with what we did against the run. That needs to improve, that will improve, and we'll apply the course in which to do so.
Mike, did you get what you had hoped for out of Joe Schobert, and how would you evaluate the middle linebacker position?
You know, I don't know that I had a hardcore preconceived notion about what to expect from him. He wasn't part of team development. It was a you know, acquisition of opportunity. And so, you know, you probably have less preconceived notions about those things. I'm appreciative of his efforts. There are aspects of his game, obviously, that I wish were better. But I guess I could have that evaluation tone about most anyone you ask about. But just in terms of anticipation, I don't know that I had a lot of anticipation because the nature of his acquisition was what it was.
Mike, it appeared that J.C. Hassenauer had passed Kendrick Green at center by the end of the season. It also been suggested that Green might be able to move to guard. Where do you see those two guys as you head into the offseason?
I do believe JC gave us the best opportunity to win at the latter portions of the season, and that's why we played him. And I am optimistic that KG has position flexibility. That's one of the reasons why he was attractive to us. We saw 2020 Illinois tape where he started and played at games at center, and he started and played at games at guard, and so that's a component of his resume. But I'm not ready to lay the center work to bed either. We made decisions at the end of the year that gave us the best chance to win based on those circumstances. There's a myriad of variables in those circumstances, and it might not reflect our plans, our intentions as we push forward into 2022.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the draft and free agency in terms of adding to the quarterback room. There was a report a few months ago that you'd prefer not to start over with a rookie, that you'd like to go from Ben to one of those everyday starter types. Have you expressed that inside or outside this building, and is the trade market an avenue for that as well?
Yeah, I have not expressed that. As I mentioned, I think it's prudent and appropriate to be open to all of the above. There's two core ways you improve your team, as I acknowledge, and that's quarterback position or any position, or the totality of all the positions. You have to weigh what's available to you in the free agent market and the cost of acquiring it versus what's available to you in the draft, and what's the best mix for us. What's the best mix positionally that allows us potentially to put the strongest group on the field, not only in 2022, but just the foreseeable future. Those are just, the variables at play in terms of those discussions and decision making. And so I'm open to all of the above, I guess, succinctly as an answer to your question.
Mike, just for clarity's sake,
Yeah.
are you suggesting that you're satisfied with the Matt Canada, quote, offense conceptually, that it was a matter of personnel not being able to execute it, or was his offense just not a good mix fit in this group?
Yeah, I'm not expressing satisfaction with any component of it. I'm just acknowledging that he brings things to the table that are attractive, and we need to be better, and we will be, and that that's a component of it as well. But I'm not acknowledging satisfaction with any component of what it is that we've done as I sit here today.
Mike, Terrell Edmonds was a guy you chose not to pick up his fifth-year option last year. How would you evaluate his season, and do you see him being a part of the defense long-term?
He did some nice things this year. I think the first thing you think about when you think about Terrell Edmonds is availability, and I never want to underscore that. This is a guy that's been ridiculously available to us not only this year, but over the course of his career. He was a 1,000-snap defender as a rookie, and I think that oftentimes we don't talk enough about availability. Productivity and things, obviously, he did some good things there, but availability is a big component of it. As you mentioned, he is facing free agency, and that's what free agency is. It's free agency for us, free agency for them. And so we'll see where the roads lead us, but I am appreciative of what he's done here, and particularly his ability to be available, not only in 2021, but the totality of the time that we've been together.
Mike, have you had discussions with Tyson or Tuitt about their interest or their ability or their plan to return next season?
I have not. I'm just at the very beginning stages of exit interviews, and really I put the young guys oftentimes at the front of the line.
Mike, as the season went on, one more thing about Matt. As the season went on, did he have to maybe pull back on his scheme a little bit, what he wanted to do, because the personnel available to him, the younger guys?
I think when you've got red paint, you paint your barn red. And I think that not only transpires in season, but it transpires at every component of the journey. We went into the season understanding that we had oftentimes new and young people that comprise significant components of that unit. So obviously those discussions were ongoing, not only at certain points of the year, but at the outset.
Mike, you've obviously had Ben for your entire career here. Do you look forward to finding that next, or the opportunity to find that next franchise quarterback?
I'm excited about that challenge. Those of us that are competitors are, you know, it's a challenge, man. It makes you uneasy. But I've learned to run to those challenges. I've learned to appreciate those challenges. The uncertainty surrounding them is inspiring to me in terms of producing work.
Mike, when you're meeting with players, particularly leadership, to what degree is the suggestion box open? And do you find yourself maybe being more open to those coming off a year like this, or are you still pretty confident in your overall process?
You know, the size of the suggestion box depends on who I'm talking to. Some people have earned the right to share perspective. Some people have been around long enough to have real perspective and understand, and we're components of building the culture and things that we value. And so those opinions are weighted more heavily, obviously. And so it's really handled on an individual basis. But make no mistake, man, I'm information gathering, I'm learning in these meetings, and I do just as much or more listening as I do talking now. Talking is a component of it, because if you sit in my seat, I think it's very important that you give a guy something from an evaluation standpoint, some perspective based on your perceptions of what it is that they've done or didn't do, and to provide some clarity in terms of how they move forward as individuals. And so there's some information being given by me, but equally as important to me is the information I receive and my openness to it.
Mike, you've got at least one opening with the offensive line coach. How do you weigh making an internal promotion with a guy like Chris Morgan versus an external hire, not just for that position, but any that may come open on your staff?
Great question. I always look at internal candidates versus what I refer to as the field. I owe it to the group to get the very best person for whatever job we're talking about that we can acquire. That's my commitment. Those are my intentions. And so that's always the case. It's the case when we hire from the outside. It's the case when we hire from the inside. We've turned the stones over, we've weighed our options, and we made the decision, whatever it may be, that we feel is best.
Had two guys coming back from ACLs this year in Bush and Banner. How do you weigh, that recovery with their performance this year? One who played, Zach, didn't really get to play in terms of got the fifth-year option decision on Devin, and how do you evaluate whether to do that and whether Banner can be a contributor next year?
Those decisions aren't made in a vacuum. When you talking about fifth-year options and things of that nature, there's a global component to it. In terms of the rest of the squad, I'm appreciative of the efforts of both guys. It was not an easy process for either guy. We would have liked it to be more fluid. They would have liked it to be more fluid, to produce more consistent fluid productivity and availability. But it was what it was. And that's often the case when you deal with major knee injury. It's not always fluid. You like to hope that it is, but it's not always the case. And so I think it's acceptable to say that we expect 2022 to be significantly better for most. I think most statistical data and things that I can reference, experiences that I can reference, that is the case as well. And so 2021 was what it was for those guys. I think we should all look and can look optimistically in that regard toward 2022.
Yeah, Mike, you have two free agents at cornerback, Joe and Akella. Would you like to have at least one of those guys back, and how do you view the cornerback play overall this year?
Value both guys, professionalism, and things of that nature, things that you value. But much like I was just talking about from a coaching staff standpoint, when you're dealing with free agency, it's free agency for us, it's free agency for them. I'm sure they're weighing what's best for them. We need to weigh what's best for us, and oftentimes that includes them and the field and the draft component. And so there's a lot of significant discussions and plans that need to be had regarding personnel and our moves regarding them. And if I didn't acknowledge that, I'd be less than truthful. And so I value both guys. I'm open to doing business with both guys. But boy, there's a lot of layers in that discussion that involve them and their position, and also people in positions outside of them.
Mike, has Kevin Colbert said anything to you about his future, and do you plan on changing any of the way you guys operate in the offseason?
He and I have had discussions about it, but I'll leave it to Kevin to address any issues regarding him and his future. My plan and our plan is to proceed in the short term, man, like we always do. He's on me already, man, bringing me up to speed with draft availability and value in that space, and planning about how we're going to move. We were talking about Mobile this morning. You don't want to talk about the Senior Bowl this time of year, because that means you're not in the tourney, and he understands that, but he also understands it's necessary discussion and planning that he and I have to have. And so we already started that process, and it's always an enjoyable one, man. We have big time continuity and understanding within our relationship. It has been great. It needs to be great as we get into this off season's work, and so that's where my focus is, and not some of the things that have been kicked around, although I acknowledge that they have been kicked around.
Mike, I remember when we asked you after the bye week what you noticed while you were watching games, and you said the impact of quarterback mobility. As you look at your quarterback room, as you plan for the future, how important of an element is that have to be for whoever happens to be behind under center next year?
Man, quarterback mobility is valued, not only by me, but everyone. It's just a component of today's game, and increasingly so.
And Mike, talking about Kevin, and you talked about earlier how you appreciate being able to deal with him frankly. I mean, he's been here with you for so long. What would your thoughts about working with another guy at that position been, and how do you feel like that relationship has been beneficial to you?
Man, I could talk all day about our relationship and how it's been beneficial to me, man. It's been a pleasure, man. In terms of, what I'm open to and things of that nature, hypothetically speaking, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But just in general, my attitude is one that I own the responsibility of being an easy person to work with. And so I'm not concerned about, hypotheticals in that regard. I make myself an easy person to work with because I don't have side agendas. The Pittsburgh Steelers agenda is the agenda.
Mike, when you see a player regress from one year to the next, or maybe multiple players at the same position, do you look at those players individually, or do you begin to wonder about the assistant coach who is dealing with them daily?
I look at all components if you're talking about regression or progression. If it's centered around an individual, if it's centered around multiple individuals, trying to figure out why, trying to figure out the ability to increase progression, trying to figure out the formula to reduce regression. And so the answer to your question is all of the above, individually and collectively in components, but also collectively big picture. What am I doing environmentally to foster progression? What am I doing environmentally to reduce the potential for regression? And so I look at it individually, I look at it in a small group component and the variables that comprise that component of it, but I also look at it globally, and that starts and ends with me.
Mike, you guys are in a much different cap situation going into this year versus last year. How does that change the conversations, or just adapt the conversations that you have with Kevin about free agents or bringing guys back?
It's a component for sure, but again, we're at the infancy of it now, and so if I gave you an illustration of it, I'd be speculating. But obviously, it changes the nature of the conversations.
Anyone else for Coach? Okay.
Thank you, guys. I'm appreciative of your professionalism and our work all year, man. Thank you. Hopefully, I was helpful to you guys in terms of doing what it is that you do. Thanks.
And there you have it.
Yo, man. After listening to that, We got, the typical Mike Tomlin stuff, a few things that stuck out was how it's not that many people that need major surgery going into the off season, like the returning guys, which is good because Juju played in the playoff game. That was like the only person that needed major surgery going into the off season. You already have Tyson out. He had his surgery early in the year. And to it, whatever is going on with him. But throughout the whole thing, man, Mike Tomlin, what I got from that was he's very optimistic going forward to the future. Really, the tone of it, because, when you watch Mike Tomlin press conferences, he really doesn't say anything. He really doesn't say anything. He says a lot of stuff that's going to give you something to write. But as far as like letting the people know what's going on in his head or what's going on in the rooms or whatever, he's not going to really tell you. He's not going to tell you. You have to really read everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't micromanage every word he say. You're not going to really get your answer. You know what I'm saying? So, but I got that. Basically, this was the year. We're going to let Ben have this year. We're going to do what we can. And Matt Canada not even being it looked like Matt Canada coming back next year. And in order for him to come back next year, that's because we already knew that this was Ben's last year, and Ben's going to have to do what he's going to have to do because he can't run around, he can't move around, and I think in Matt Canada's offense, you need a mobile quarterback. Deshaun Watson. I'm just saying. Or you just need a quarterback that's going to be a quarterback of all quarterbacks, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Immunized or not. You feel me? Like, come on over. But I think Mike Tomlin, he really thought they had a chance in that Chiefs game, man. He really thought he had a chance, man. I know us as fans and, certain media outlets or whatever, they saying, they had no chance, they had no chance. Like, fans on the outside, we saying, yo, we got a chance. But on the inside, we knew we didn't have a chance. Looking at Mike Tomlin talk today, I'm like, all right. That man was hurt. He was hurt. But it is what it is, man. That's the Big Ben. It's the end of the Big Ben era, man. It's time to really see what type of coach Mike Tomlin is. We have a small sample size of that when Ben was out and Mike Tomlin was able to go 8-8, with Duck and Mason. That was a sample size. Now, it's not even like a sample size because we know Ben is coming back. This is reality. We going to need a new quarterback. No matter who it is, it's going to be someone new other than Ben Roethlisberger that's going to be the day one starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm looking forward to it, man. It's a lot of Mike Tomlin hate. You can critique Mike Tomlin and everything, but it's flat out hate for the guy. Like, if you go in these Steeler groups, man, you're going to see this flat out hate for the guy. Obvious reasons, but I'm not going to touch that. But going into the offseason, man, I think this is Kevin Colbert's last year. Mike Tomlin say he's going to let Kevin speak on it, but the report was already out. He's looking to retire after the draft. You feel me? So this is going to be their last year. Hopefully they can get another solid draft class in there. We play a little bit harder in free agency when it comes to certain guys that can help this year. And I don't mean a Melvin Ingram where it's like, all right, instead of getting Melvin Ingram, we should have got like maybe two guys that's like not big on name. That could have backed up TJ and Alex Highsmith. Or get some offensive linemen with some name. I think Dan Moore is going to be good in year 2. I'll keep him at left tackle. Kevin Dobson will be back. So it'd be good to see him. But every other position, maybe move Kendrick Green to guard. You know, you got 2 offensive lineman positions that you can fill, like with some solid vets. Trey Turner, you know, he made it his deal to say he want to come back. Salute to him if he does come back. You know, but we should look into try to get some move people now. Because it's like we're not catering to the quarterback because we don't know who the quarterback is. We need to cater to that young guy that went the whole regular season without a fumble, came back for the playoff game, fumbled because he was trying to protect his elbow the whole time, and he got benched for it. Not benched in a bad way, more so like, okay, Najee is not even he's not even Najee right now. Let's not waste this kid's career in year 1. But, man, looking forward to the offseason, y'all. It's a couple more press conferences I'm going to watch, you know. It's going to be some – I seen Mika. Matter of fact, I can actually change this now. We can get it rocking. I seen Mika had one from earlier. Let me see what he's talking about, man. Yeah, man, we're going to listen to Minka Fitzpatrick. And then we are out of here. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a whole new stream for it. Man. But it's your man, Cat Veezy, man. Lock in. Shout out to everybody that came in and tapped in, man. VentureSeasonNetwork.com. Get in tune, baby.